The guest list for our engagement party was sitting on the kitchen island, right next to a half-eaten pizza. I was laughing, pointing at a name, and said, "I can't wait for my coworkers to finally meet my future husband." Leo didn't laugh. He didn't even look up from his phone. He just set his beer down with a heavy thud and said, "Actually, can you stop doing that? Stop introducing me as your future husband. It's embarrassing. It makes it look like I'm settling for you, and I'm not ready to project that image to the world yet." The room didn't just go quiet. It went cold. In 3 sentences, the man I had supported for 5 years, the man whose medical school applications I had stayed up all night editing, and the man I was supposed to marry in 4 months, had just turned my heart into a block of ice. Before we find out how I turned his settling comment into the most expensive mistake of his life, drop a comment and let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. Are you a night owl or an early bird? I read every single one. You won't want to miss the moment Leo realizes that the person he was settling for was actually the only thing keeping a roof over his head. Hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. My name is Molly. For the last 5 years, I have been the invisible architect of Leo's life. When we met, I was already established in my career as a senior project manager for a construction firm. I understood blueprints, budgets, and foundations. Leo was a struggling student with big dreams and a bank account that stayed in the red. I loved him. Or at least, I loved the version of him I thought I was building. I paid the rent on our first apartment. I paid for the car he drove to his rotations. When he was stressed about exams, I was the one who made sure the fridge was full, the laundry was done, and the utilities were paid. I told myself it was an investment in our future. I was the foundation, and he was the skyscraper. But skyscrapers have a funny way of looking down on the ground they're built on once they get high enough. The night he made that comment, we were in the house I had bought. Because my credit score was perfect and this was a disaster, the mortgage was in my name. My down payment, my hard-earned savings. But to the world, we were a power couple. "What do you mean settling?" I asked. My voice felt like it was coming from a mile away. Leo finally looked at me. His eyes were different now. He had just started his residency at a top hospital and the white coat had gone straight to his head. "Look, Molly, you're great, you're stable, but let's be real. You work in construction. You wear boots and high-vis vests. I'm moving into a different social circle now. Surgeons, specialists, people with pedigree. When you tell people I'm your future husband, it locks me into this box before I've even seen what else is out there." "What else is out there?" I repeated. "Leo, we have a wedding date. We have a cake taster scheduled for Tuesday." He shrugged, a cold, casual movement that made my skin crawl. "Maybe we should put the husband talk on ice. You can stay here, obviously, but in public. Let's just say we're roommates who are dating. It keeps the pressure off me. I don't want my colleagues thinking I jumped at the first girl who paid for my textbooks." He got up and walked to the bedroom, leaving me alone with the guest list. I looked down at the names, my parents, his parents, my best friends, all the people who thought we were in love. I didn't cry, that's the weird part. When you realize the foundation of your life is cracked beyond repair, you don't cry. You start looking for the demolition tools. I sat there until 3:00 a.m. I realized that for 5 years I hadn't been a partner, I had been a patron. I was a scholarship fund with a heartbeat. And Leo, he wasn't settling for me. He was using me as a launching pad, and now that he was airborne, he was ready to drop the dead weight. The next morning, I woke up before the sun. I watched Leo sleep and felt a strange sense of detachment. It was like looking at a stranger. I realized that if I disappeared tomorrow, Leo wouldn't know how to pay the trash bill. He wouldn't know where the spare key was. He wouldn't even know the password to the Netflix account he used every night. I went to work, but I didn't focus on blueprints. I called my lawyer, a sharp woman named Sandra who had helped me with the house closing. "Sandra," I said, "I need to know my rights regarding a roommate who isn't on the deed, isn't on the mortgage, and has never paid a cent toward the principal." Sandra hummed on the other end. "If there's no marriage and no lease, he's a guest, Molly. Why? Is everything okay?" "It will be," I told her. I spent the next 2 weeks being the perfect roommate. I stopped introducing him as my fiancé. In fact, I stopped introducing him at all. When we went to a hospital mixer that Friday, an event he forced me to attend because he needed to look stable, I stayed in the corner. A female surgeon, Dr. Sterling, came up to us. She was elegant, wealthy, and exactly the pedigree Leo was drooling over. "And who is this?" she asked, looking at me. Leo didn't even pause. "This is Molly. She's..." She's the owner of the house I'm staying in. We've been friends for a long time. Friends? Dr. Sterling looked confused. Oh, I thought someone said you were engaged. Leo laughed, a light, dismissive sound. Oh, you know how rumors are. People see two people living together and they assume the worst. Molly, been a great help during my studies, but we're just seeing where things go. I felt the blood rushing in my ears. The worst. Being engaged to me was the worst. I looked at Leo. He was glowing, basking in the attention of his people. He didn't see me as a person. He saw me as a piece of old furniture he hadn't found a way to throw out yet. That night on the drive home, the silence in the car was heavy. You did great tonight, Leo said, checking his reflection in the visor mirror. Dr. Sterling really liked me. She mentioned a private practice opening in 2 years. This is why the husband thing needs to stop, Molly. It opens doors when people think I'm available. I see, I said. So, you want to be available. In a professional sense, he lied. It's all about optics. Optics, I whispered. I'm very good at optics, Leo. It's literally my job to make sure things look exactly the way they are supposed to. When we got home, I didn't go to bed. I waited until he was asleep, then I went to the guest room and started a file. For 5 years, I had kept every receipt, every Venmo transfer for his car repairs that actually went to his bar tabs, every loan for his tuition. The total was staggering. Over $180,000 in direct financial support, not including rent or groceries. Leo wanted to be a roommate? Fine. Roommates have contracts. Roommates have boundaries. And most importantly, roommates can be evicted. The transition was subtle at first. I stopped buying the coffee he liked. I stopped picking up his dry cleaning. When he asked why his favorite blue shirt wasn't pressed, I just looked at him and said, I'm not sure, Leo. Maybe you should check with a local dry cleaner. I've been really busy with work. He frowned. But you usually do it on Sundays. I usually did a lot of things for my fiancé, I said with a tight smile. But since we're just friends and roommates, I figured I should focus on my own chores. I'm sure you understand. Optics, right? He looked annoyed, but he didn't argue. He was too busy texting someone, probably someone with pedigree. The next step was the maintenance audit. I told Leo that since I was the homeowner and he was the resident, I needed to do some major renovations. I'm going to be moving some things around, I told him over breakfast. The master bedroom needs a complete overhaul. I'll be moving your things to the small guest room in the basement starting Monday. Leo dropped his spoon. The basement? Molly, that room is tiny and it smells like damp earth. I need space to study. I know it's a bummer, I said, sipping my tea. But as the owner, I have to prioritize the property value. And honestly, it's weird for just friends to share a bed, don't you think? It might give your colleagues at the hospital the wrong idea if they ever found out. We wouldn't want them thinking you were settling. He turned red. You're being petty. I'm a landlord, Leo. There's a difference. While he was at the hospital, I hired a crew, but I didn't renovate the master bedroom. I did something much better. I had the locks changed on the internal doors. I moved every single piece of furniture I had bought, which was 90% of the house, into storage. When Leo came home that Tuesday, he walked into a house that was almost entirely empty. The living room was just bare floorboards. The dining table was gone. His study was just 4 walls and a pile of his textbooks on the floor. He found me sitting on a lone folding chair in the middle of the kitchen, eating a salad. What the hell is this? He screamed. Where's the sofa? Where's the TV? Where's my bed? Oh, I sold them, I said calmly. Well, I moved them to my new place. See, I've decided to list this house for rent. It's a great market right now. List it for rent. Where am I supposed to live? Well, I've drafted a lease for you. I handed him a stack of papers. Since you're a resident now and making a good salary, the rent is $3,500 a month. That includes the basement room and access to the kitchen. Utilities are extra. Oh, and I require a 3-month security deposit up front because, frankly, your credit score is a liability. Leo looked at the papers like they were written in a foreign language. $3,500, that's my entire paycheck. I have student loans, Molly. Optics, Leo, I said, standing up. A man of your pedigree wouldn't want to live in a cheap apartment, would he? This is a premium home. If you can't afford it, I totally understand. There's a YMCA about 6 miles from here. I hear they have great roommate vibes. Can't do this, I'm your fiancé. I stopped at the door. No, Leo, you told me very clearly to stop calling you that. You told me you were settling, and I realized. You were right, I was settling. I was settling for a man who used my heart as a stepping stone. But the thing about stepping stones, you eventually leave them behind. I walked out and stayed at a hotel that night. I left him in an empty, cold house with nothing but his pedigree to keep him warm. The fallout was spectacular. Leo tried to stay. He tried to claim squatters' rights, but my lawyer was faster. Because he had never paid a single bill and I had a recorded conversation of him calling himself a guest and a roommate, the police informed him he had 48 hours to vacate or be charged with trespassing. But that wasn't revenge. That was just the demolition. The real optics happened on the final day. Leo had reached out to his parents, crying that I had gone crazy. They showed up at my house, ready to scream at me for ruining their golden boy's life. My own parents were there too, looking worried. Leo was standing on the lawn, his clothes in trash bags, a poetic touch I learned from a story I heard once, waiting for his parents to pick him up. He looked small. He looked like the struggling student I had met years ago, only now he had the arrogance of a man who thought he had already won. "Molly," his mother shrieked. "How could you do this? He's a doctor." "He has a reputation." "He does," I said, stepping onto the porch. I wasn't wearing my work boots today. I was wearing a sharp suit and holding a tablet. And I want to make sure everyone understands exactly what that reputation is built on. I turned the tables around. I had created a professional invoice of support. "Leo," I said, my voice carrying across the quiet suburban street. "Since you're so worried about what your colleagues think, I decided to send a copy of this to the hospital's ethics board. I just wanted to ask them if it's standard practice for a surgeon to incur $180,000 in personal debt to a friend under false pretenses of marriage, only to discard them once the financial goal was reached." Leo's face went from red to ghostly white. "You wouldn't." "I already did," I lied. I hadn't sent it yet, but he didn't know that. "And I also sent a little note to Dr. Sterling. I told her how much you enjoyed the optics of appearing available while I was home paying your car insurance." Leo's father stepped forward. "We'll pay you back, just keep the hospital out of this." "No," I said. "You won't, because you don't have it. I've seen your bank statements, remember? I'm the one who's been hiding your pedigree from the collection agencies for 3 years." The silence that followed was the most beautiful thing I had ever heard. Leo looked at his parents. They looked at the ground. My parents looked at me with a newfound respect or maybe fear. It didn't matter. "Leo," I said, walking down the steps until I was inches from his face. He flinched. "You said you were settling for me, but here's the reality. You weren't settling. You were clinging. You were drowning and I was the boat. You decided to poke holes in the wood because you didn't like the color of the paint. Well, the boat is gone now. Good luck swimming." I watched them drive away. Leo was squeezed into the back of his father's old sedan, surrounded by trash bags. I didn't sell the house. I moved back in a week. I bought a new sofa, a better one. I bought a new bed, a bigger one. And I changed the optics entirely. 6 months later, I was at a charity gala for the construction industry. I was being honored for a new sustainable housing project I had spearheaded. I was standing there, a glass of champagne in my hand, wearing a dress that cost more than Leo's monthly car payment. A man approached me. He was kind, successful, and he looked at me like I was the only person in the room. "I've heard so much about your work, Molly," he said. "I'd love to introduce you to my partners. How should I introduce you?" I smiled, thinking of Leo, who was currently working double shifts at a clinic in the middle of nowhere to pay back the loans my lawyer had officially processed. I thought about the text I'd received from Kayla saying Leo was living in a studio apartment above a laundromat, still trying to explain to Dr. Sterling why he disappeared from the hospital's social circle. I looked the man in the eye and said, "Just introduce me as Molly Fletcher. I'm the owner of my life, and I'm definitely not settling." Leo thought he could treat a person like a temporary contract, but he forgot that contracts have fine print. Have you ever been told you weren't good enough by someone you were literally carrying on your back? How did you handle the optics of your revenge? Drop your story in the comments below. I want to see how many of you have built your own glass towers after being left in the dark. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button for more stories of justice served cold. See you in the next one.